Oh, human. All right, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Serafima, thank you so much for being here, first of all, as our speaker. I'm so excited. This is my second collaborative session. And you know what? We're going to make it a thing. We're definitely going to make it a thing. And I am so excited to learn from you today. I'm not going to be taking mic for too long. I'm just going to give a little bit of like introduction basically on what's going to be happening today. This is us next to the beautiful heart. We're so happy to see you here. Thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to see like folks coming into the call. Whoever can join, please do, because we're going to have a massive Q&A session, most likely. We're planning for it. And so there will be an opportunity to actually pick Serafima's brain, and that's going to be very, very exciting. So how we're going to start? We're going to basically have the welcome and house rules, which is happening right now. Then afterwards, Serafima, of course, is going to take over the mic and introduce herself. And then we're going to dive in all the good stuff, in all the beautiful parts. I am not going to be speaking. I'm not going to be sharing the screen. So we're going to be getting all the knowledge from her, which I'm so excited about. Then afterwards, we're going to have a section of getting inspired with Mobbin. It's actually a very exciting part as well, because we've tried it last time and I've been seeing people writing that they're using it already. Someone like got into their actual account and benefiting from the tool. And so we want to expand on that because I personally believe in the power of it. But who am I to tell? I'm not a designer, right? So like we're going to be listening to actual designers who are using it. And then afterwards, we're going to move into the Q&A session, which is going to be very, very exciting as well, because I want everyone to have an opportunity to basically ask anything. So rules of the house, and I can see that everyone, most likely, like, you might have been to some of my events. I actually have some like super supporters because I have like the tool that's tracking it. And I see some people have been to like 3 to 4 sessions. Thank you so much. Like, I don't know how I deserve so much support and trust. And I hope you learn in every time something new. So the rules: mute your mic, be active, ask your questions. You can always drop the questions in the chat because I'm going to be doing nothing basically the whole hour. So I can also facilitate and drop them like afterwards to Serafima. I might pause Serafima once or twice just to ask like a follow-up question, but most of that's Serafima's kind of space. And we want to also see how the flow goes for her. Ask clear questions if you do. Remember, this is the case study, presentation, and building session. So let us not dilute too much into like the landing pages or the CVs or the networking, right? Like we want to focus on this specific topic, which happens sometimes, and then have fun and learn, right? Like we want to make sure that we actually learn on the events like that and yeah, make it as useful as possible. Let me find my Zoom very quickly. I still need to like really get used to it. Zoom, it's a little bit of feedback for you as well. So this is the Canva link. Let me pin it. I know, pin for everyone. There you go. I learned it from last session. And you can join me here. And I want to just understand, Serafima and I actually want to understand, obviously, like what is the temperature here? Like, you know, what's your role? Like what is up? Like, you know, are you touching your portfolios here and there? Like, are you working with it? What are the tools that you're working with your portfolio? And, you know, like be free to choose several, because obviously like some people build portfolios in just like the web tools, but some people like Serafima using both web and case study. Hello, people who said that I was sold out to pitch because I pitched that, format. It's actually used by some of the most successful people on the market. So I'm happy to actually bring the person who is going to show it to you. I never lie. So we're going to see the results. Just like give it a couple of seconds. Cool. Serafima, shall we also start going into your introduction? I'm going to stop sharing. And if you want to kind of, jump in, and we can go from here.
Fantastic. Yeah, sounds great. So while this is all brewing, I'm very interested to see what the split is like. The session is actually designed for anyone who needs to be presenting. We are tailoring it obviously for people who are working on product and design and research, but I think it'll be useful for everybody. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, you can call me Sima. That's my nickname. So I was originally from Russia. I moved to Ireland about 8 years ago. I started in product design around that time. And yeah, and I've always been interested in startups and scale-ups. Worked on some cool companies who recently exited, like Intercom, Wayflyer, Deep Note, and most recently at Kotta as a product lead. So what I'm hoping for this session is I'll kind of jump between my case study and the approach I take to strategy of that case study. We'll always leave some time in between for 1 or 2 questions, so you can dive a little bit deeper if you want to clarify certain things. But yeah, I'm happy to kick this off, I guess, if if you guys like. So I'll share my screen. Oh, perfect. Great. So a little bit of a disclaimer. What's worth mentioning is why do I use a deck format? Why do I use Figma in particular, slides and stuff like that? I know it's a heated debate, like where should your profile and portfolio like live and all that stuff. I've found that hiring managers are always preferring to see a portfolio presentation that you've really kind of sat down, thought through, created a narrative, and showed your work end to end. And Figma is just a tool of choice. There are a bunch of different tools that you can try and do the same. And yeah, I found that this is the format that's been working really well for me. I wouldn't necessarily keep it just like that. I've always tried and experimented. If you've seen my website, I'm trying to also add a little bit of a video case study there just to see what the, what the feedback is. But a lot more managers would prefer just a link to Figma slides. That's just the reality. All right. You can see here in my Figma that this is just a history of all my work. I think it kind of shows you starting from like Rebrandly, Wayflyer, Intercom, Deep Note, Metacortex, and like stuff. You can see that it's been kind of building on top of that structure all this time. And I don't show everything to everybody. That's just a straight off the bat. What is the structure that I follow? So you can see it here in the agenda. So I've always tried to tweak my intro a little bit. Yeah, so it's a prototype. Do you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna actually share this in the chat so you can all see it. So what I'll be sharing is the product lead kind of case study thing, but I also want to walk you through some items and some areas that I worked on that are not in the particular case study here. Feel free to use the structure, I don't know, reuse the whatever format that you find works for you. I find having an intro, at least like 5 to 10 slides, is very important for like a beginning of conversation. So what does it look like? It looks like here you see like 9 slides here in the intro. You see that Deep Note has like what 20 slides, and you see like Metacortex has whatever 15 or something like that. So that's kind of the TLDR. When I show this, when I present this, I only tweak my title or whatever I want to be presented as. And I sometimes tweak potentially if there's a certain timelines that I'm not fitting into, right? To make sure that I take over the session entirely and I'm running a hiring manager or recruiter or a designer through it. They can just relax, sit back and enjoy. So what I want to do now is I want to run you through an intro, exactly the way I present. We'll pause after the intro and you can ask any questions you like. Okay? How does that sound? Good? Fabulous. So, hi, nice to meet you. My full name is Serafima. Feel free to call me Seema. I would like to structure this session in a way that would be useful for both of us. So it'd be great to obviously introduce myself, learn a little bit about you. I will then walk you through 2 of the case studies I've prepared that I think will be the most relevant for the role. And then we have some time for the Q&A after. How does that sound? Good? Awesome. So, as I said, call me Seema. I was born in Russia, based in Ireland. I've been in design for over 8 years at this point. But I've always been passionate about building products and designing cool experiences. My first role was actually in mobile. I was designing a furniture marketplace app in AR, which was hot at the time. The company didn't last long. It sold the technology to IKEA Place, which was pretty cool, but then the entire team was let go. At that time, I moved to Ireland, started with a company called Rebrandly, and actually ended up doing first stint at Growth before Growth was a thing. We were designing and building growth experiments with CEO and growth manager. We were actually doing a lot of cool things. And I was really interested in kind of diving deeper into this space a little bit more. I was really hungry to really own a lot more of the design process. And at that time, I had early team Wayflyer reach out and asked me if I'd like to be a founding designer. So it was a mad shout because it was 9 Irish lads in the basement of Dublin saying that I would be a great designer to join. And I thought, you know what? Sounds like a great idea. Let me do this. And it was a roller coaster of a ride. So we started from 10 and we grew to 500 people in about 2 years' time. It's a massive, massive growth. So what does that mean? That means that I've built the product and design team from scratch. So I ended up hiring people at product, brand, and research, managing a team of 8. And I was leaving Wayflyer as a senior design manager. Quite hungry to be building again, to be honest, quite tired of just managing full time. So I joined Intercom. Intercom is obviously, as you know, phenomenal, fantastical company. Always been on a bucket list for me to work on. And it was a fantastic role for me to join. It was a growth. So it combined a lot of that autonomy, independence that I've built out over my time at Wayflyer and the early stints at growth at Rebrandly. So at Intercom, I was working across self-serve and sales-led growth. And obviously the thing was amazing. But what I've noticed is that there's a lot of designers in the growth org. So I was one of many. And again, as you can probably tell by the story of my career, I love to be owning more and asking for like more autonomy in my work. So what ended up happening is I had an offer to join DeepNote and own the entirety of growth. So from acquisition, activation, monetization, everything was in my remit. And I was able to really bring a lot of that AI vision to life for the company. It's very exciting times. So yeah, AI has changed the world. And I've seen this happen first time at Intercom and DeepNote. It was ramping up. And at this point, I felt, why not just dive in head deep into agentic experience? So MetaCortex is a company that I was a founding designer at, again, building AI command center for founders. So this is basically a whole walkthrough TLDR of my career up to date right now. You can kind of get a sense for what excites me. You can kind of get a sense for the type of things I'm looking for in my role. And hopefully that gives you a sense of that. So before we dive into a particular case study, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
Any questions, folks? That's your chance now.
Hiya, I have my hand up. Can I come in?
Please, yes.
Hi, Lena. Hi, Jeffina. A question I have is so you talked about this would be kind of the idea when you walk through the actual hiring manager through the portfolio, but how do you handle kind of sending out your portfolio? Like, do you send out the same thing with the introduction, or how do you get the first contact with the hiring managers?
Yeah, I do that actually. I do send a link. Sometimes it'll be a link to my website, sometimes it'll be a link to this if people are interested to see the whole body of work and not just like a preview that you see on my website. This has worked really well. Interviewed with a bunch of companies, top level, they're all enjoyed just clicking through it. A lot of people kind of came back to me saying they love how easy it is to just follow, even though you didn't have me narrating it. So I kind of kept it as is. And I also find just most important part, the intro you can reuse. You can just copy and paste this in your whiteboarding session so that whenever you start a whiteboarding session, you can say, hey, just a quick 5-minute walkthrough. This is all my experience. Let's dive deeper into it.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
There is another question from Juan, and he asks, do you adapt your portfolio and your profile to one niche, and you present it using the language of the stakeholders?
Yes, yes. You would probably hear me talk slightly differently in my intro, depending who I'm presenting to. So sometimes I would have like high level corporate lingo, none of the stories about me designing in the basement, right? But sometimes I can sense the vibe of the conversation. This is really important because the slides are kind of universal, but the way you narrate is different. And what is important to maybe mention here is that the cases that I'm presenting in the link that you have is MetaCortex and DeepNote, which are designed for product lead role. What you see below would be like, for example, Intercom and Wayflyer. Those would be interviews for staff product designer, roles within, higher, like, let's say larger companies overall, because they require more time for a presentation, more time for a case study, and they want to see more in-depth examples. That's why those are the meatiest cases that I have. I still keep the Rebrandly just for myself. just to be like, oh, I used to design this. But it's okay that you don't include your first case studies in the presentation. Some, the work gets outdated quickly. It's just the reality of design. So it's important that you remember yourself, the type of challenges you solved for, and you can articulate that with whoever kind of is asking.
I love this point. And I think like I would also be recommending if you have many case studies to present, like think about the latest and the most relevant, right? So when I see the case study from 6 years ago, sure,
Yeah.
it's great, but is that relevant to the level of the craft and strategic influence that you have right now? Because 6 years is the whole career, actually. So that
Yeah,
is
it is a
also
whole
very
career.
important.
It's true. I've actually like only the last 3 case studies I've been presenting, like on and off. So it's intercom, deep note, and metacortex. And I feel like this is also a good litmus test. Are you getting better? Is your work getting better? Are you trying to improve your craft? Are you trying to rework some of your presentations to be sharper? I think that's a good standard to keep yourself kind of, more on your game.
I agree. Let us answer the last short question. Maria asked, like, what would you recommend for junior designers with limited experience when putting together the intro slide specifically?
Yes, fantastic question. I do think that entry-level designers are underestimating the power of personal projects for the intersection. So the intersection is your time to wow people, is to show them your interest and how you go without clear direction, right? You go and explore concepts, you build stuff. And how sick would it be if you actually like share a link? You'd be like, hey, this is app I built. Check this out if you have free time. Amazing, especially if the projects that you are working on are somehow potentially related to whatever the job you're applying to. And sometimes I think in today's day and age, I would even go as far as, if you really want to get a certain job, don't hesitate to like spend an hour or two playing in the tool, trying to build a kind of thing for them, and like see if you like it, if you enjoy the industry, the type of project problems you'll be solving for, and just present, be like, I explored this was really fun. If it's relevant, let me know. Those are the types of hires that stand out the most, for sure.
I could not agree more. And like specifically for junior talent, I think side gigs and projects like that, this is your opportunity to show the craft, the understanding, the excitement, the curiosity. Because if you have 10 years of experience and you show me only like those fun projects, I have questions too. But if you're very junior, maybe you've never even worked anywhere, but you have a lot of that, I'm happy to talk to you. So that is an excellent advice. Thank you so much. All right, there's a lot of questions, so we're going to be tackling them in the Q&A section.
Fantastic. Yeah, let's get started. Before I do this, before my job at Intercom, I actually added Rebrandly Way Flyer and my personal project. And I ended up chatting about the personal project on one of the whiteboarding sessions and some culture sessions. So feel free. Like, this is obviously a fantastic opportunity to like talk about your interests and stuff. So right, let's get back to the structure of the presentation. What matters in the intro, we've kind of talked about it. But what I think is relevant is the approach to some bigger case studies that I take. So what I have always is a bit of a logo, company, and what are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve, right? It does help a hiring manager to understand the kind of, okay, this is some data stuff happening. Okay, cool. And then you're diving into the company's mission. And this is not necessarily relevant for designers or like PMs, but this is, if you're ever talking to a founder level people, they love this. They love how you're able to connect a mission to the work, and how you see that link and how you're able to articulate that link. It's not necessary that you add it, but you do get people paying attention when you start with a mission, because that's how all hands start, So think about it, maybe potentially adding this to your case study. Every single case study includes a team structure. That's like non-negotiable. It's a very important question. One feedback I get from people, like when I interviewed, is that, oh, I didn't have any follow-up questions for you. You've asked all of them. So that means that, the structure works. So team structure question is very important. The team's ownership is very important. Kind of describing the areas that are not within the remit and what exactly was your job that you were doing in this particular, team or pod or group. I absolutely always mention key metrics. And this is maybe an advice for an early stage designers. You don't have to know the outcomes all the time, but the goal of you thought about the key metrics that you might be measuring, right? Or you might be, thinking about that's what's important at this point. And as senior you get, the more senior you get, sometimes you're then being asked to define a metric that didn't exist before, like it was in this case study. So weekly active notebook editors is a metric that we've established at DeepNote as a proxy for activation, because the companies who activate, that means they use the notebook. And the more they use the notebook, it means that they have some value of it, right? So that's why we kind of added it there. The things about the approach differs from company to company, and your goal is to articulate that approach in a concise way. So we followed a Basecamp shape up approach. It's a 6-week cycle. And my goal in this case was to collect all the inputs, map them onto the growth flow, define the opportunity based on a size, then work out this into the roadmap, and then analyze and repeat again, right? That's like a few sentences that you go through approach. And then you also might want to elaborate on certain areas that you owned end to end. In my case, it was user interviews. I owned user interviews end to end. I interviewed prospects and existing users. I kept the backlog of people reach out to that we keep engaged all the time. I've also chatted with churned users. So that was the area that I was also happy to mention. And this is actually a little shout out to the growth reviews that I've been doing, which is sometimes helpful for people to see the artifact of the work, right? In a lot of ways, when you're mapping out a journey and you're figuring out what's working, what's not, like I did this by sticky notes and by clarifying the opportunities and then the designs that I've done. And this is just a preview of this, which is helpful. The framework that I follow with big projects and big case studies is small wins, meaningful shifts, and big bets. This is an example of a small win. When you're taking an existing flow, you're figuring out what's wrong with it, and you're adding small little tweaks to make it better. In this case, what's going to happen is oh, users were saying that this list of buttons doesn't really work. Maybe we can think about, it in a different way. The question doesn't make sense. The UX is kind of clunky. And then my goal is, okay, I took a look at this. The feedback came in. I quickly implemented this solution for the new flow. And that signals your hiring manager, a PM, or somebody else that you're able to hit the ground running, that you don't need months and months and years of onboarding to get in the weeds. You're able to identify opportunities and act on them straight away. So that's an example. In this case, we've added a new personal use case. We've also added a question with experience with notebooks, an intent question, like what are you hoping to use a notebook for? Why do profiling questions matter? Is because we're able to segment users better and tailor the onboarding for them better down the line, right? So you're kind of mentioning that as you go, then you go into existing experience. And this is the big roadblock that you faced, potentially a meaningful shift. What is the thing that your company is struggling with and you've identified and you're okay, it's messy, but we'll make it work. So this is the example. This is the onboarding stage of the notebook. It's a lot of data. You're very confused. What are you looking at? And this is exactly what our customers were saying, our new users were saying. And what did that look like from a metrics point of view? Is just a high initial drop off. It was really scattered user journey. The value wasn't clear exactly what does this notebook app does, when you land here. So what ended up happening is just me doing a visual exploration. Okay, if we were to scrap the notebook, we make it pure and clean, just like you have a Word doc, right? And we help people derive some sort of value from it. What would it be? So for DeepNote, it's AI. So they're helping data science managers and everyone else who works in data to analyze the data better. So, okay, we know that AI is the winning formula, but how do we know it's actually working? How do we know it's the thing that they need? So this is where the growth element comes in. So my goal as part of my job is to define a hypothesis, right? And in this case, I'm walking people through it. I'm saying, okay, there's hypothesis 1, 2, and 3 that I've considered. I came up with designs for, and we work together as a team to figure out what should we do better first, right? And our argument was that if people upload their data, they'll get the most value out of the experience. And that's also one of the riskiest ones, right? Because if the hypothesis 2 and 3, we provide data for you, how do we know you derived the value? So then you just go straight into the example. Okay, we rolled it out. This is the result. We had an uptake. We had 22.4% increase in the connection of the data. That's a fantastic result for a small experiment. What do we do then? We go into big bets, right? We figure out a learning that we take from a mid-level kind of feature, and we're trying to see, is there something we can learn and adapt elsewhere? Can we take that learning and actually solve activation not on the user level, but on the workspace level? And that's the problem we faced. So this is the problem where people who were joining a workspace had no visibility into the process of other people, like how are they setting up? So if you're a manager and you invite people, how do you know from this screen what state are they at? Do they need your feedback? Are you collaborating together on certain things or not? It's really unclear. And there's a lot of call to actions, a lot of outdated video. There's a lot of stuff happening. So we knew this is a problem because one of the biggest customers previously had churned for the lack of discoverability in the product. So it's very important that you frame a problem as, this is churn problem, this is discoverability problem. It's not just UX. It's a real meaningful business problem that you're solving. So at that point in time, you can start solving it small. You can like remove buttons, you can clean up the interface, but certain things, they're coming, like AI. The vision was that we actually bring this functionality into the entire workspace. We will able to let our customers get instant verified data answers in the workspace home. We sketched that. And we thought, okay, if we were to bring it somehow, that would be the time, right? Because we were designing the whole experience, might as well to bring a piece of vision into it. And this is the part you start exploring, and you're showing exactly what you thought about when it comes to piecing those parts of the interface together. And again, we're talking about a vision piece, which in this case was a prompt bar. We're talking about activation of the workspace, which in this case is onboarding checklist. And then lastly, we're talking about the solution for the discoverability problem, right? Of people churning, not knowing exactly what people are working on and when, list of projects. This is the area that might take the longest for you to talk through with your manager around the trade-offs, around the decisions of the design, around the component library used, and a lot of things, right? What matters here is that you paint a picture and you leave a little bit of room for them to like ponder and think about, right? You don't have to jump explaining yourself sometimes, but you'd be like, this is the area. And if they have questions, they'll ask them. If they don't, and they're really interested, what did you come up with at the end? You're talking about iterative design approach that you took to a very ambiguous area. And I like that mention of V1 part, which matters. So what matters to me is that we take this vision, we know we won't be there 100%, but we're making meaningful steps towards it. So in this case, we did bring a prompt bar, we brought an onboarding checklist and list of projects, but the area that we descoped is basically an area where you can ask all the questions. Right now in the V1 version of the prompt bar, it can only create new projects for you based on your requirements. It cannot yet answer the questions, but that's fine. We're working on like adding this functionality in the future. It turned out to be a much, much bigger ask, but as it turns out, even that particular shift helped us get to 6.5% adoption of the new workspace home, which is fantastic. We also saw lower risk of churn among enterprise customers because now they can see the list of projects and areas where they need visibility. And obviously, the learning from the previous experiment on the lift of 22.4% of the activation is really, really important to also highlight, right? So they don't forget. So that's kind of where I'm ending this. And the end of each case study, I have feedback and questions slide. Feedback is always either with a colleague, my direct manager, CEO, like any person I worked and collaborated with closely, that I trust their judgment, I'm including. So in this case, Peter, shout out to Peter, fantastic. So at this point, I want people to not just know how I feel, how I work, how stuff like this happens, but also like who am I as a person. Like I'm the type of person who values relationship with my colleagues so much that if I leave a job, we'll be in good terms, right? Like that's the example. I'll pause now. We've gone through a lot. So before we go into the next case study, do you guys have any questions that you want to ask?
You have a crazy amount of questions. Like even if the whole session was just about the Q&A, we would never cover all of them. But I saw
Oof.
one question popping up continuously, and actually I had the same question and kind of like some thoughts. And I would love to surface it back because you do have those slides, some of the slides that would have lots of visuals and like very complex visuals, either from your actual work or those explorations, right? Like where you afterwards would show the V1. And obviously there is a differentiator of like what you can show on the deep dive as you present and what you can show as you just send the portfolio, or what you can send if you present to like the CEO or like the founder. So like once again, like different stakeholders at the different stages of the interview. I wonder how you would separate it. Like, would you have the same one? Because I'm curious. I don't know the answer myself. Like, what's your approach here?
You know what? I thought about it as well, and my realization is that I used to have some low fidelity sketches. I scrapped them. I no longer do them. Okay. I am moving towards showing high fidelity always. And this is a little preview of the future case study or a prototype or actually pulling up the real code or like as close as you can get to the finishing product so you can get a feel for it. That's what I want. I want people to be like, ooh, like, ah, that's where you think of going. Nice. Like that's what I want. I want almost to skip the decision making of how we got there to just make people aware of all the different things I'm trying to juggle there, right? So the explorations sometimes are really, really vast, and sometimes they're disconnected, and sometimes they lead towards a dead end. That's fine. That's fine. That's part of the process. And I think it's important to show this to people and also trying to vet them. Like, do they understand that that's the part of the process? Because you also obviously want to work with people who value design, right? And value you exploring a bunch of different things and figuring out it doesn't work and, reshaping it or whatever. So that's kind of how I'd answer your question.
I love that. It's a great point. Like back in the days, like with all my clients and like the previous companies, we wanted to say a lot like, how do you think? Like, it's not about what you've built, it's how you got there. How did you know it was the right problem? How did you know it was the right solution? Like how did you know? Like how did you try to get that vetting kind of experience? Like, yes, this is the right direction to take. If I made to add just on that, I mean, personal, that is my perception, like from seeing also like, how hiring managers work with this. I think it depends on the role and the type of company you go in after, because like you've worked in some like very technical, very complex, very interesting companies. I remember like back in the days at Miro, we like, what you showed like with lots of screens, for example, that would be totally fine. But like having like the headers, especially at the application stage, like, when you're not there to explain. And that's why,
True.
yeah, like you would need to like give some context rather than showing me like a slide with five
Everything.
different screenshots, because then like I'm like, did you think about me as the user for that perspective?
Yeah.
So be careful here. And I really loved like the part that you showed from your actual work, like in the, the boards and like the explorations, because they were still clean. And that's what people quite, confuse when they're like, oh, but I showed like the piece of the workshop and there's just like this mess happening. And I'm like, you make your portfolio look dirty with that. Like, if you show
Yeah.
something, I would rather even ask you to redesign it specifically for the piece of the portfolio, just to make sure that like I can actually see something that's happening there and I can like get a better feel rather than just like a blast. But I don't know, do you feel the same? Like what would be your impression?
Yes, absolutely. This is quite interesting, like topic, like how much of a mess do you want to show, but you still want to present, like for example, if I go back, I'll just quickly run you through the explorations here. All of them basically we kind of scrapped, but what matters is we explored a bunch of different layouts, the colorways, but also like the reason why, and this is also the things you want to show sometimes how you get things wrong. And like this is the example when we got too high up there thinking about implementing AI, but we're like, oh, let's actually define an experiment that has a defined criteria by which we know we did a good job, by which we, and so on. So this is the example, or like, okay, we are showing a workshop. What's the goal of the workshop? Like how do I know you did a good job of this workshop, right? And ideally, it's the end of the workshop when you've aggregated all the things and you've defined 3 themes and you're showing the 3 themes and you saw these are the 3 most important things that we took out of this workshop with 100 users, and I'll walk you through them one by one, right? Like that's the thing that they want to see.
Yes, I love that. It's like, people show like their research kind of briefs, and I'm like, don't show that to me. Show me the three insights, like key insights from the research.
Exactly.
Like, what did you find out? That is excellent. I absolutely love that. Okay, plenty of other questions, but let us proceed, I guess, because lots of folks saying that you've put so much into one case study, and like it feels
Yep.
so really end to end, like very elaborative. And some folks saying that like sometimes they didn't have an opportunity to have that much time. So like, how much time would you take to actually present this case study? Is it like 20, 25 minutes? Is it longer? Like, how does it work?
I can run it in 15 by skipping a few slides, if I know that we're short in time. It can be as long as 40 minutes if you want me to go deeper into edge cases, how we built this, what was the, tensions, how we disagreed within the group and so on. Like, there's definitely a lot you can add, but make sure that the slides are there just to do the core things that you can quickly run through.
Yeah. So go with the flow, really, like how the room feels, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes some practice, I have to say. So sometimes you'll be running over. That's completely fine. Make sure that, for example, the second case study you're presenting is a bit shorter. And this is also the life hack I have here for MetaCortex. It's a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
So
That is great. And also like a small tip, and then I shut up and give you the mic back. But I do remember like feedback from Mira came a lot that like, the person didn't manage to finish the case study. So I think like checking the temperature in the room, like, do you want me to continue or do you want me to actually
yeah.
skip to the next one? That's like, you need to be asking to understand what do they expect from you, because if you just assume, you might be hitting the wrong note.
Yeah. And sometimes people prefer to dive deeper into one versus seeing 2. And sometimes people are like, okay, I've seen this one. I kind of get it. Let's jump into another one. Maybe I will see something you haven't showed yet. Yeah. All right. I'll move into maybe the second one if you guys will allow me, and then we can keep a much larger section of the Q&A at the end. So this is the case study that is fairly different from any design ones because it is built for me as a product lead working on high ambiguity area. And I start this kind of case study and I explain it is that, look, it's a founding role in a pre-seed startup where we're just basically trying to come up with ways to utilize AI and apply, like, and actually have some value for people. And the way it started is not what you see here. The way that the structure of the team set up is me being a product and designer, working together with ML engineer, and obviously reporting to CEO, CTO, and COO. So very, very small team. When we started, we had a slightly different problem statement in a thesis. Our framing question was, if the AI model itself is interchangeable, where does the real product differentiation come from? We were trying to figure out high-level problems. And the hypothesis here was that the memory is the key layer of differentiation in AI products. And no, it's high level, it's designed to be, it's not meant to just like, here are the slides. This is the high level conversations that a lot of people having right now, trying to figure this whole thing out. So what does it look like from my job? So my job looks like having a bunch of interviews, 50 plus interviews across startups, scale-ups, and large orgs, where I'm chatting to people who are managing AI memory, building AI memory, maybe evaluating different AI memory solutions that exist and trying to get a sense for what does that look like. So in this particular case, we're trying to figure out, okay, if we were to segment them, what would this look like? It looks like AI kind of copilot situation, looks like AI memory infra situation. And here by the way, as a preview of how I use Mobbin. Back in the day, I was just like dump everything there because a lot of people wanted to see step-by-step onboarding for a lot of these products. And then unfortunately, sometimes it happens, in AI, you realize that the thesis and the hypothesis is incorrect. So in this case, the learning was that the memory as a standalone infrastructure isn't compelling enough on its own. So we really needed to anchor that in a clear use case. And we learned that through obviously A, conversations with users, but B, competitive analysis, right? So what we figured out consistently across the interviews was that founders had this context fragmentation problem. They were struggling with clarity and prioritization. And we're talking about smaller team founders. We're talking about maybe 5 to 15 to 20 people, right? You're still trying to build in this new age. You're trying to get all the context. You don't have a big team and you're drowning. So we thought, okay, wouldn't this be the best thing to help founders get the context they need so they can build? And we're kind of building on the next generation of founders. So we've quickly put together a prototype and code that we shared, and this is just a preview and design of a morning brief. It's nothing really much. It's just a way for a person to come in and get their morning brief where they connect a bunch of different tools like Slack. This is the prototype, by the way. This is me clicking through it, allowing it access to my Slack. It's ingesting certain data. We are basically giving it some context of who I am. It runs a workflow, which presents in the form of like a Notion doc that you can act from there. And once you've acted on the certain action that it proposed, it's basically done the job for you, right? So what if we kind of built this infra for you as a command center from which you can act and do certain things? So before I go into the how and what's going on, do we have any questions up until this point that we want to address?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Sima. And the question is, how did you thought to connect your solution to the other softwares for the morning brief? Because they are connected with the Slack and
Yeah. This is basically the how. This is I'm about to show you. I'm keeping you, I'm keeping you interested. Let me tell you how. Let me do it. So what does this look like? Like, how do we go from, defining a use case, right, to kind of figuring out that this has to be a morning brief interface? We are defining a hypothesis around the type of things that are critical for a certain experience to be. Like, we know that for a founder, in order to get the context from all different places, the things that really matters to them is that the context is getting to that tool fast enough. We're able to generate a certain brief for you fast enough. We're able to, like, again, have the agentic capabilities to derive what matters to you at the same time, right, and present it. So basically, we went from having those conversations to putting the priorities on those items in the product hypothesis list and trying to validate them one by one. And when we tried to figure out, okay, how does it all piece together? Morning brief just was one of the ideas. This was also a version of maybe like a Slack message, an email that people get, like a lot of different tooling and stuff. But we realized that for us, for our use case, it really does matter that it sits within web, so we can connect a bunch of different tools and MCPs and work with that and validate a lot of technical capabilities alongside it. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. Yes, any other questions before I dive into the usability guide?
Let's dive in, I think.
Sorry? Yeah, let's do it. So the things that matter to me is obviously definition of what good looks like on the product side. That's the product hypothesis list is for, and also the usability testing guide and kind of how do we test that as we chat with founders, as we present those solutions to them, and we're kind of chatting without necessarily asking any leading questions, but we knew the things we were testing for. We had like a bunch of different tables for things that we were checking. And this is just a little preview of that, like on the user research side. So The things that I ended up picking up and doing a lot and actually enjoying was building the front end for a lot of the features that I would design. This was just a preview of like the V0 of the Slack integration when you're connecting a bunch of different things, and also obviously testing the capabilities that we've just shipped, like figuring out the acceptance criteria for each thing. So we define it and we learn what it is and how it works. So in today's day and age, some of this is called evaluations for agentic experience. All of this was a fantastic foundation for me for my current role right now as a product lead in AI is building in that tool, right? Trying to figure out how to piece it all together. And I think that's honestly one of the selling points is that I no longer just, interview users and design. I interview users, design, define product criteria, define acceptance criteria for testing, and do the front end. Like that's such a vast kind of area for you to own. And do the work and understand and help out. So that's kind of been really useful for a lot of companies who are trying to hire someone like me. So what does the outcome look like in this case? Over 50 interviews. We had only 8 weeks to design and build the MVP, which is what you just saw. We've had a chance to onboard 10 teams and we had 1 paying customer. So that's kind of outcomes of the founding level role. Sometimes though, it does happen, that certain roles don't work out, even though everything was fantastic and phenomenal. So in this case, I worked with founders directly and ML engineers, but unfortunately, one of the founders had to leave the company, and that meant that investors had to pull the money due to a different risk profile. And I talk about it openly. I talk, hey, look, pre-seed startups sometimes don't work out. This is the reason. Still proud of what we built. I'm still happy to give you names and numbers of people I worked with because I think we had something going. And yeah, that's kind of the whole tool, the whole spiel of my case studies. I'm ready for Q&A or any other ways that we want to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. And before we go into the Q&A, like the Mobbin part and then the Q&A, first of all, thank you so much. Incredible. Absolutely love it. Like I feel I can become a product designer and actually show the case studies now. Honestly, so useful. I also want to highlight, because you remind me one of my friends as well, Elvis, and I've been sharing his portfolio so many times. He's like a big, great example of like how he's presented himself and then build the case studies. And I love that you, Sima, I actually didn't even know, and we've known each other for a year. I can't believe you didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
But I love how you speak in every case study about not like a failure, but like more like it didn't go as we planned, but this is how we pivoted, or like this is what I've learned. And
Yeah.
I would be careful with that if I was like very junior, maybe, because like you also want to like sell yourself. But if you are on your level of seniority, I personally find that like teams respond so well to how you own up like the mistakes and the pivots and what come out of it. And of course, it's amazing to actually be in the conversation and be able to explain how come, So once again, be careful with just like sending it out in the application stage. But I think this is such a powerful way to show I can own my mistake, I can learn from it, and look how well it still came out, like look how well I'm doing right now, like even after that. So I absolutely love how powerfully you bring it up into both case studies. Like I would be putting the strong yes into my scorecard, being like, did you see how cool? So I absolutely love that. Thank you so much. Cool. So I feel since we're so hands-on deck, shall we go and see a couple of, because you mentioned Mobbin, how you're using it, and I kind of like want to still continue being in that like designing part before we are going into the Q&A part. So let me share my screen very quickly. Let me see what I'm trying to share first of all. And yes, folks, the event will be recorded. It's actually always mentioned on my Luma page, and then at least 10 people always ask me in the email and then on the call. But I always try to remember to record it. But keep on asking, because if you forget about it, that is the problem. So let us see. First of all, this is the link, and you folks all have access to this board once again. So feel free to jump with us if you want to and explore it together, because there is no gatekeeping in these sessions. But basically, if you want to go and explore Mobbin, please do use this link because this is how we keep these sessions free and accessible for everyone. I also believe that Mobbin is an excellent tool for anyone building their portfolio in research or product design, or actually building, as we've just seen from Serafima. And so what we're going to be doing on these sessions today, I've picked up three flows for three very well-known companies, and we want Serafima to basically explain us, like, what she sees, how she feels about it, and if she was to build something, like, how would she use any of those examples as an inspiration. But I guess to kick off, Serafima, could you, because we kind of touched upon, and you said, like, now in the session, oh, I've used Mobbin, but how do you use it? Like, what do you do with it?
Yes. What I can share, right, is just a simple way as, going through the flow. As far as that, might be useful for people when you're especially early in your career and you kind of get a sense that all the exciting design stuff only happens in the B2C mobile, like I was thinking. No, that's not the case anymore. We live in an exciting world where B2B SaaS can actually be sexy. So like, this is what I wanted to show, like 3 examples where I think the design is pretty great. And it's obviously like shameless plug, like Wintercom was one of the cases. So if you don't mind, can I share the screen, Lena?
Yes, please.
All right, let me see. Share a window, this one. Fab. So I have 3 cases. I'll walk you through them. From my own point of view, why do I think they work great? Maybe the things that I would change potentially if I was doing them. In some of them I actually did do, and also how would I use this right now, since I no longer just come in and click on the prototypes anymore. I've been using Mobbin for years now. I think first versions of Mobbin, way before it even had like a search capabilities, I was using it. So I'm really, really stoked. So RTO is one of those tools, in my opinion, that does very clean, minimal design for an area that is usually pretty data heavy, dense. That's a CRM. So this is just an example. Why do I think RTO is great is because they're trying to bring a lot of that human approach and like making you love the tool and own the tool by incorporating some experiences of like gamification. So as you add profiles, you see some examples of the interface on one side, and it kind of comes alive as you add more context. We love that. We love bringing users onto the journey of owning the tool. And the goal of the onboarding is for them to feel like, oh, it's theirs. They're part of the stack now because I've customized it, I've personalized it, it's mine. So this is just an example of how they do it. I personally like it. I like how clean it is. I love how you can kind of intuitively go through the flow without worrying too much about it. And obviously, I love the growth side of me loves a reverse trial. I'm able to trial something for free for 14 days and how clear it is, stated in the model. So this is what it looks like when the data is already there. And again, like a very simple, clean stuff. Love the work that team at Atio does. I'll jump into Intercom. So this is the type of work that I also was a part of. If there are people from Intercom, big shout out, congrats on the exit, amazing work. Get that bag, So when I'm looking at Intercom, I'm looking at almost like the best in the game, right? This is great design. And there's obviously like some legacy things that they're trying to work out. This is just the example of their legacy onboarding. And now if you go check out and like try to onboard, you'll see entirely different onboarding. And I think that's also something to keep in mind as you use Mobbin, that, things move so fast. Like you need to always double check the real version. So this is the stuff that I would comment as to what I could change here. A lot of people who might be migrating from different tools might not know the difference between Fin AI agent and Intercom suite. Like, right, like it's a very Intercom driven language that they know, or like I know, but before that it's kind of messy. You kind of don't know what you're subscribing for. You're like, oh, maybe I want both. I don't know, right? So this is the part where, like, obviously there's the name, the password, and all that stuff. A bit outdated from like what the new design is, and you can kind of feel it. So, in my opinion, the first impressions do matter a lot. because this is now how the new interface looks, and you already feel like the difference in how it kind of presented. What I do love about this part in particular is the profiling questions. They're designed by Daria. Shout out Daria, she's phenomenal. So when you're looking at those questions, you can get a lot of context as to how Intercom works, and also what things they actually do and how they think about driving value and showcasing that value to the end user. So profiling questions, as I said, they're designed to personalize your experience once you're onboarded, right? So when you're looking at those questions, even if you came in just for lead generation, you realize, oh, they do self-serve support. Oh, they improve CSAT. Wow. Like, that's the goal, right? So, but the way they came up with those things, those pillars, is by doing a very intensive cohort analysis of all the customers and what their key use cases are, trying to also map them onto the usability and user research as to the things that they find the most valuable. So when they're presenting to you this, they're presenting the best of the best, right? And they're also trying to do a little promo without doing too much. So the question here is about customer service tool. Why does it matter in B2B SaaS? Is because most of the times, if you're enterprise, you're migrating tools all the time. Okay. And this is a signal to your sales teams and customer success teams that this customer might need help. Fantastic thing. Think about it. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening in the background. So the channel support that you prefer, also a little bit of a product promo, in my opinion. Like, we can do both. We can do everything, just to let you know. But also the personalized onboarding, telling you, hey, you selected email and live chat. Here's how you set it up, right? So this is the about volume overall. I guess this is like a sales team hand raiser. If you're doing a lot of volume, sales team will reach out to you. So, keep that in mind. And then the last couple of questions. If you're managing a team, that means you're a decision maker. That means you're the person who are truly evaluating the tool. And then the last question I absolutely love is, when do you start using Intercom? So for any B2B SaaS, you need to know the urgency. Like, do you need this yesterday? Are you still like exploring the tooling? And another thing that I've probably maybe worth mentioning, something I've learned from Deep Note, when you do profiling questions, people tend to click on the first or last when they don't read the question. So think about it. Think about, maybe sometimes you need to swap them out so you don't end up with people just clicking first all the time. So this is now what the onboarding looks like. Phenomenal. Like, I think Intercom honestly just started the trend of the graphics and the beautiful artwork in the background. I'm not mad at it. Like, it's still good. Still good. All right, I have a last one for you. This is Deal. For you, those of you who don't know what Deal is, what's their deal really is, they're doing payroll. They're able to basically hire you in different companies based on the entities that they have, which means that Meta can hire a person from India now using Deal as their intermediary, right? The reason why it's important is Deal is one of the fastest growing companies in the world right now. And you'd be like, that's boring stuff. Like, what are they doing exactly, right? And then their design team is phenomenal. If you go on LinkedIn and search their names, you'll find they share absolute nuggets. Like, go follow. So what I love about them is they're trying to bring something as kind of boring and mundane as, like, accounting, setting up companies, like providing benefits to people, and making it look a little bit more fun. A little gradient never hurt, in my opinion. So here you kind of understand that they hire people globally, they work as a contractor, you can do all sorts of things. And they're also presenting their services. The area what I would probably redo or make it better is that you need to understand exactly what does Deal HR mean and what does Deal Payroll mean. And this could be maybe a little preview of the interface, maybe a little, like, because honestly, people don't read, all right? So you will come up with the best copy in the world, describing it, that was run by Claude, by, I don't know, the best content designer ever. Like, you should start working with visuals more in something as complex as Deal. But I kind of love their welcome page, fairly clean, very simple. And the parts that it gets complex, it immediately jumps into complexity when you realize how many different things you have to manage to like hire somebody remotely. But yeah, I felt like this was an interesting one to show you guys. Yeah, so let me jump now into MCP. How about that? So everyone in Kata now is using Mobbin MCP in their code editor of choice. So that could be Claude, that could be Cursor, that could be Codex, doesn't really matter. So when we are thinking about designing a particular feature or doing a research or like any of that, we are actually opening up Cursor more often than not, or Claude, and asking questions. And the way you can do it now is by, maybe I should share. Can you see my cursor now?
No.
No, exactly. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay, I'll do this now.
Perfect.
I've been using Claude for a long time. I'm now switching to Cursor because recently Claude had an outage and I couldn't work, and I realized, damn, I have to set up Cursor. Cursor had gone a long way since I last used it. I recommend you guys check it out. It's insane. So what does the MCP kind of look like? It's looking like a little tool in your toolbox that you can kind of like click sometimes and be like, hey, Mobbin, can you tell me about this? There is in-depth step-by-step instruction of how to set it up. I'm not going to go through this right now, but what I can just present you real quick is, can you show me the, let's say, examples of settings page in, this is going to be tricky for it. I'll try to ask trending. Ooh. And trending companies, among trending companies. So I use it. So basically what I end up doing, this is just a question just to present to you what it could do, but you're able to query all the different designs, all the different prototypes and things that exist in web version of Mobbin. And it will pull this into Claude or Cursor for you. So you're able to query it, you're able to reference it, you're able to send it to Figma later if you want to keep it for later, you want to review it. And the most beautiful of all, if you like something and you want to have a first version that looks exactly like it, you can just say, hey, can you build this for me? And you can work off of that. I'm not saying you should steal people's work, just FYI, but I'm saying that now it takes literal seconds to go from an idea about something to potential version of it that you can use, you can play with and tweak. So yeah, it now pulled Patreon, Reddit for me and stuff. The tricky part I wasn't sure it's gonna do is trending, because it might be like, oh, trending where? But it did it. I think it's the trending ones among things. And I'm currently working on reporting functionality for Kata, and I like did ask it, okay, like what's the reporting dashboards visualizations look like for inspiration? Can you show me? The beautiful part here is that you can use Claude or Cursor or anybody just to kind of ask more questions about the patterns in general. Like if you're new in design, there's so many things that you don't know. So you can cross-reference this as your thought partner, so to speak. So big thanks for Mobbin to actually have the MCP. I think it's phenomenal. And by the way, I think it's also free for like as part of beta program. So try it. If it's free, then I apologize, but I've seen it included in the Pro and all the others. So like check it out. I'm down now with everything. I think that's a wrap on my end. Yeah, we can do the questions.
Love it. Thank you so much. And I love what you said about like not stealing someone else's job, but like getting inspired, because I feel like that's what Mobbin is for, you know, like getting the inspiration. And Serafima, I'm not gonna lie to you, like looking at our chat, like I can tell that you have inspired a lot of people. So like thank you so much as well. It's really impressive. And we have so many questions. Before I dive in, folks, if anyone is gonna be diving into Mobbin and trying it out, please use the link that I've shared, and I'm going to follow up with the recording, with the slides from Serafima, with the slides from myself, with literally absolutely everything in the email tomorrow. So don't worry, you will have absolutely everything. It would just be amazing because, as I said, like, I'm trying to build the whole ecosystem for everyone to get better at their work and their job search. And so that is the small thing, how I prove to the sponsors that we are collaborating together. So try it out, enjoy. Let us go into the questions. I don't even know where to start. I'm going to be trying to scroll as much as I can. But I think the first one that I want to start with, I'm not sure if you have any work on the NDA that you are showing in your case studies. But if you don't, how would you if you had?
Yeah, I think I had some work of Intercom under NDA, and I would not include it in the presentation that would send out. I might include the versions of it that are close to being production or in production as a little preview. Those things I would do. In my opinion, there's always room around what you can present. What has saved me so far is a lot of artifacts of there is this process thing that we did and the process looked like this, right? Or there's the learnings that you can share was, for example, the 3 kind of insights that we derived from talking to users. Sometimes those you can share. So you have to know, but also if you are good friends, which you should be with the hiring managers that you're leaving company, you should tell them, hey, look, I want to keep some things in my portfolio for presentation. Do I have your permission to do so? So more often than not, they'll tell you, yes, you're okay. Please don't share them publicly. Please don't advertise them. But if you're interviewing, you're okay. I would say in a lot of ways, you can eliminate this problem altogether if you're sharing your work as you do the work. Example is if you're sharing snippets on Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere of the little parts of the job that you do, or you're being more active on social media, I think there's a lot of things that you can just reuse after. So that's also the perks of maybe running social media that I'm learning from Lena now that I should be doing more. But yeah.
That is very smart. And I also love, this is a very similar piece of advice. You don't have to share it publicly, which you should because you build your authority as well. But you also can create, one person shared with me that they create a file, and basically every Friday they had a block on the calendar where they would take screenshots and write down a little bit what they've done. And now it's so easy. You can literally ask an agent, what did I do?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have to do that, literally. So please, folks, do save your work because it is very painful afterwards. And I love what you're saying about having good relationships with the hiring manager. I also want to point out that NDA it's basically for not publicly sharing it. However, when you are in the closed one-on-one call or 1-to-3 call in the portfolio deep dive, everyone shares the project under NDA. I've seen most of the projects under NDA. So the problem is not I cannot build the case study. It's how do I make it interesting enough and give enough details for the application stage so I get through and I show. But I saw one of the questions I have 1 case study that I can show publicly and 3 under NDA. 1 case study and a good landing page should get you there. I don't even need to see 4 case studies. In fact, how many do you usually submit? What's your take?
I think 1 strong case study beats 3 or 4 ones. And you try to pick the one that you're most proud of. And if you're not proud of it, ask yourself, what would make me be proud of it? What can I add? What if I saw it, what would make me excited about it? Maybe there's a world in which you only have the designs for it and now you're gone, in a different company or whatever. What if you just recreated this experience, added it as a prototype and added to your case study right now? Because that's what you would have done. And that's okay to do because you know the work, you've done the work. And now you're just presenting the work in the best possible way. I don't see anything bad about that.
Same. I love that. And it's also about the narrative that you're trying to create, what you think is the right part about this case study. It's about the impact, about the relationships, about the process improved. And I love this is also the part why I reached out to Mobbin, which does not happen often, like in terms of the sponsors, because I was like, people were asking like, if I lost access to work, if I don't have screenshots, like, do I need to redesign it from scratch? And I'm like, well, you can go to Mobbin and literally, like, kind of, it's so easy. So that is also like a cool use case. Speaking about relationships, and like I've seen a couple of interesting questions actually, which go more into like almost HR field, but like you've been a designer, having relationships with PMs and engineers, and now you became a product lead. And so people ask like, how would you speak in the case studies and like in your presentation about complicated relationships when there is an actual conflict happening?
I think maybe there's a lot of like disclaimers that have to be added, that conflicts are fine. Conflicts are part of life. It's just the way we talk about them, is the way we, because it's actually beautiful. What it means in reality is that people care, right? People care enough that they bring their point across and they're trying to defend the point, and sometimes they don't align. That's fine. So what matters here is common ground, right? What has helped me in the past is, if you're working with data-driven people, the best way to really convince them is, okay, let's look at the data, let's create a hypothesis, let's measure it, let's work on that. Sometimes data isn't available, that's absolutely fine. Another thing that really, really works is, let's bring in a user feedback. Like, can we actually ask a person who's doing the work? Can we tap into their feedback? Can we maybe find support tickets or sales conversations to really see what's going on? Because, and more often than not, it's not about like personal conflicts, but about different view that you had, during a conversation about a certain problem. And most of them get resolved, in my opinion, by using data or user feedback. And if it's something entirely, different than that, sometimes we put our ego aside. Sometimes we value, like, we pick our battles, is what I call it. So certain things, certain hills you don't want to die on, you say, okay, like, I'm happy to like disagree and commit to your solution, right? Because what matters here is that even if you disagree, we're in it. We're in it together. We're not against each other. We'll try it, right? We'll make it work. And I think that signal really matters to a lot of people, like engineers, right? To PMs, designers, to show that you're not gonna put up walls and like block yourself out of the conversation, that you're there to like figure this out. So
I love this. I actually once was in the hiring process where they had a competency that said disagree and commit. Like, can this designer actually do that? And I think that is also very important to show like the conflict, not from the nasty part, and like not to speak nasty about them, being like, oh, they were so wrong, but like whatever, like this PM is so behind. Never speak badly about people that you used to work, because everyone is going to be thinking that you're going to be talking about them this way as well. So like be careful about the manner how you deliver that, but absolutely love it. I'm seeing a very cool question as well. And I feel like we didn't spend any time on your transition from design to product, which is a loss for a design community, but who knows? Maybe we're going to see Serafima coming back, because like non-linear careers are here. But a person basically asked, did you have a portfolio to get like a PM role? Does a PM need now a portfolio? So maybe you can give a little bit of the background, how it happened, and like then share your perspective.
Yes. It's a ongoing conversation in my head. Like, who is a designer these days? Like, does the designer just, sits in Figma, or designer is making interface decisions that might be sitting in Claude? It's a new world out here, honestly. And I think we'll see the roles collapse. We'll see the roles blend into each other. And I think my role is just an example of it, how I'll probably still continue doing design, but also doing product. And the way it came to be is by, again, being active on LinkedIn. The fact that sometimes you can message a CEO, the audacity, to message CEO and say, hey, I see you're doing something really cool. Do you think there's a chance we can work together? Right? Phenomenal things. But also the conversations got started initially thinking I was a designer or going to be a designer. So I presented the work that I shared with you guys. So it was metacortex and deep node case studies. I walked them through it. We had a whiteboarding session. In the middle of the whiteboarding session, I'm realizing that, yes, we could solve it this way, but this is kind of old school way. like, do you know what? We should build an AI infra. And then I'm sitting there talking about building an AI infra. We should do the agent orchestrator that should be doing this. And they're sitting there like, yeah, okay. Like, it's still solving the problem, but just in a different way. And once I did that, I realized, oh my God, what did I do? Like, nobody asked me why. Why did I just go on a tangent? I realized, okay, let me package this up. Let me package this up because I think I had something. So this is the part where I think in today's market, you gotta sometimes go an extra mile. So I sit down with Claude and we put my initial thoughts and ideas about the benefit builder that uses multiple agent orchestrators and how would that look like in design? How would that look like from experience point of view? I build the version, I build a prototype, I record a loom, right? I share this back on LinkedIn saying, hey, look, I thought I couldn't leave it like that. I think it needed to be done. Here's the link. And then he was sold. He said, very good product sense. Let's chat. And then that was the product lead role. Is this replicable pattern? Probably not, right? But the things I do recommend is sometimes go an extra mile. Sometimes you're thinking, maybe I shouldn't say things I'm really thinking. Maybe you should. If you're really feeling strongly about some kind of solution that you think is right. It has done me poorly when I was younger. It has done me much better when I was older because I'm able to tap into that a bit better. So, but the TLDR of it, right, is I think case studies still relevant for product roles. I think they're showing exact same things: product sense, being able to prioritize, being able to work with trade-offs, collaborate. But there is some product kind of aspect of it, which is, okay, how would you go about building it? What is the maybe collaboration with backend, front end, and things? How can we trust you that you will lead this successfully? And again, this is the territory, right, that is fairly unexplored. There's not that many AI jobs out there, right? We're still kind of trying to figure out those things. So some hiring managers would take a bet on you, and that's fantastic. If they don't take a bet on you, work on your own projects, show examples of where you ship code, where you commit to front end, where you have GitHub repos. Those would be fantastic.
I absolutely love that. And I also applaud companies that are open to exploring. I think that is so important to get into the environment that allows you to move across teams and roles and projects. And especially when they still don't know you, but already say, you know what, let us bet on you, because that is how you succeed basically in the market, this like that. We still have 10 minutes for the Q&A, but I kind of feel it's a very good warm up because folks, Kota is hiring, so you have an opportunity to actually work with Serafima, which if I could, I would apply, I swear. So Serafima, do you want to share a little bit, like, how people can get in touch with you or the role, like, what's going on there?
Yes. So a little bit of a kind of intro as to where exactly do I work. So Kota is an Irish startup that recently grew into Series A. We're growing really rapidly. We are offering benefits to B2B SaaS companies like Intercom and Tropic and others. So what does this look like? If you have a pension, you have your life insurance, all those things are the boring things, right? That you kind of need to have. We're rethinking that. So we're trying to say, okay, what if those investments that employers and yourself are making into this, what if we can get back a lot more from it? What if we reimagine the whole benefits space? And we're doing this one step at a time. You can check out kota.io, or you can message me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to refer you. We're looking for senior product designers who'll be working on a platform that is customer facing and consumer facing. We have web applications, we have mobile apps, we have a fantastic team, phenomenal team who are really hungry and who are really passionate about something that, on the surface seems so boring. But I think that's the exciting part, is that it hasn't been, disrupted. Nobody has touched it in years. It's still email and phone calls. Like, there's so much to do to make this like a fantastic experience. So yeah, I hope I did it justice, the whole company in this direction. But so please do reach out. And thank you so much, Lena. It's a phenomenal session. I'm hugely privileged to be a part of it. I thank everybody making, asking questions and stuff. Feeling really, really lucky.
Oh, I hope so because, well, I mean, we are lucky because you are sharing today. So thank you so much for doing all of that. And folks, like I have been talking about networking for years and years and years, and no one is listening to me. But like, did you hear how Sima got the role? She networked for it. She just like cold call a CEO and was like, hey, hello, here I am. Do you want to hire me? So now you have an incredible opportunity because like your small outreach that doesn't even need to cost you an outreach. You can just like connect with Sima and add this like 300 words being like, hey, I was at your session. Here's my portfolio, and Sima will be able to redirect that potentially to the recruitment team and to the hiring manager. So yes, please do use that opportunity. Check out the career page first. What is it required? Right? So like we want to know what is the profile looking like. We don't want to just apply and make it their job to select. We want to make sure that we select ourselves first and like come up with good case studies to showcase and a good narrative why you are the right candidate, and then go ahead and share your chances. Honestly, the worst thing can happen, you will make Sima your friend. I mean, like this is literally a great conclusion of the session anyways. Okay, let us ask two more questions and we'll be rolling off. So lots of people actually been asking, and I kind of like want to know your opinion, right? Because like you've gone through so many companies in the recent like 6 years, like 7 years. And so people are asking like, what have you been showcasing? Is it something that you would be emailing to like, recruiters or like application, or maybe would you try to like network for the roles? Like, what is your approach here?
Ideally, you want to build a snowball effect where the companies you worked for have alumni that moved into other companies that if you like their culture and you want to continue. For example, I love Intercom design culture and product culture. So when I had a person who used to work at Intercom, then was at Wayflyer, and then asked me if I want to join, I immediately thought, okay, if they have the same mentality, working on Intercom, building products, we'll be a great fit. So what you want to do is probably figure out like types of companies you like. Try to find a company that has similar culture, and then from a snowball effect of other alumni changing jobs, try to find where did they land. And this is an example. Kota has alumni from Wayflyer, from Deep Note, and Intercom. Imagine what kind of like bang, bang, bang. Like I come in, I know everybody. So that's also, I think, playing into that, right? Because when, for example, CEO has somebody reach out to them on LinkedIn, they turn and be like, oh, do you know this person? They go, oh, actually, yeah, we work together. Like that's how small of the tech world really is, if you think about it. And you have to tap into that. Like I shamelessly add people on LinkedIn, shamelessly. Like connect. And sometimes I don't even know who the person is. They're sometimes in San Francisco. We will never overlap. I don't care. They're doing great work, right? So like, I don't know, just be a shameless networker. Like
And what is so shameful about it anyways? Like why is it like, why did it become like cringe moment?
It's controversial because like if you don't know a person and they're knocking on your LinkedIn, like what's the chances that they would, connect with you? And I get that. Like some people get a lot of, I don't know, I've heard talent acquisitions and recruiters, they have like hundreds of people every week that they're kind of, adding to their network. But some people are more private. Like I respect that. I don't mind. It's your little space on the internet.
Yeah. 100%. What's your approach with connecting them? Like, do you just like click connect, or do you add like a small one-liner kind of about yourself and why you're connecting?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes for example, there are folks who do great things, like crazy things. If you've been to a post hog website, I'm not sure post hog, they're crazy. They're like a little hedgehog that has its own little world, and it's very odd. I'll share it with you. If there's no if they change the website, I'll find the version also share. Because if you find something really awkward, weird, funny, cool, like I reach out and I would comment and I would interact with people. And why is this such a revelation? But basically, this is how I think I found like you, Lena, as well. Like I think I found your content first, and I kind of started like, you know, interacting with it, and I found it so useful, so entertaining and delightful. So we have to be more open-minded. I think internet is sometimes so like far away from real life, but we can bring life into it. And yeah.
I love that. I love that, bringing life into internet. Also, like, who cares? Like, have fun, get to know people. Like, this is how I feel as well. Because, like, I have lots of internet friends that I've never seen. Like, only Sima and Emmanuel, like the speaker from the last session, like 2 weeks ago, like already on the session, they are my internet friends. Like, and this is crazy, but I love it so much. So you can only win from that. I absolutely support and adore this mindset. Okay, so Sima, the very last question to you, and we're going to be rolling off. I know I asked it, but like, let's announce. So like, of course, people can reach out to you for the role. Is there something like maybe like, you wrote before or something like that? Like how, like, is there any other way to get in touch with you? Or like, should everyone connect with Sima on LinkedIn then and write a meaningful one-liner?
100%. I would accept every single connect. I really, really do value feedback. This is the first out of, I'm hoping, many types of talks around product design, building an AI, and all types of different things. I promise, Lena, that I'll take my social game seriously. This is important, all right? And it's not only important for like myself, it's also me looking back, following other people on their path and feeling like, oh, I think, I feel connected to this world that is so odd, with the new things are happening in AI and so on. So just follow me if you have any particular things that you're curious about. I think Lena is phenomenal at taking feedback and rolling with it. Maybe there's going to be a new session. Who knows? That's up to you. But yeah.
I love that. Absolutely. And folks, please connect. Serafima, thank you so much. So everyone who is on the call, you will get absolutely everything that has been discussed here, right? And plus one website that we need to see with a Hitchcock, because like I'm sold now. Like, like whatever that means, like I need to see that thing. People, I want to ask you as well. I'm gonna share with you the feedback form, and it's gonna take like 5 minutes max. Please do fill in, because we need to know, how did you feel about it? Was it useful? What was useful? How was useful? Because those sessions will continue, and I will continue bringing you Sima and Emmanuel and others as well. And I have a massive network. I want to support you, but without knowing what you need and how it lands, it's very hard to support. So please let us work together, right? Like we're making hiring better together. And I'm so excited about this vision. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sima, so much. I absolutely loved it. Honestly, it was absolutely awesome. And the things are coming, and I will see everyone in 2 weeks for the next session. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Mirza.
Thank you.